Now, Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We'd like to thank Allah Jalla wa ala for allowing us to come together bi-ithnillah. Just a brief commentary, if you will. For those who did not catch the episode 4 to the Fajr Club, I advise you, brothers and sisters, when you get time to go check it out. Our brother Akil Ingram has done an excellent job in laying out some of the basic preliminaries dealing with the second stage of the cognitive model that was laid out in the framework of Dr. Abdul Haq, and it touches on a very important point, which sometimes we always ask ourselves this question after 25 to 30 years or so. Where did we go wrong here in the West in regards to not just the da'wah, but the regards of the information that we learned from Islam throughout these years and the application of that information? And if you look at the second stage in that cognitive model, which was laid out in that framework, you will see that this is where a lot of the abstract knowledge has been applied because the youth have become so eager and they couldn't escape it. It's inescapable for each and every one of us when we embark upon something and we are exposed to something that we begin to behave a certain way. And that's due to our eagerness and us being energetic. And we want good. All right. So, and in that good, we misapply things and we miss things, and some steps are overlooked. And I think in that eagerness, there is some contention that takes place. In other words, we start contending with the people who should be teaching us. We start conflicting, not only within our own selves, but with others, because our understanding sometimes is not the correct understanding. So, this is not a word for word recap of every point that was mentioned on that episode, but I do want to, by the permission of Allah Jalla wa ala, touch on some key points that I believe our brother Akil Ingram touched on that hopefully we didn't miss. And I wanted to adding some points from the ulama to help us get a better understanding of that. And the first thing I would like to touch for you guys is that you have to understand that those stages which brother Akil Ingram was talking about, because I want to talk about this first. We saved the juicy part for later. I know some people, when they heard the title, episode 4, how eager youth have become scholars, they was wanting to, see if we were going to touch on, some of that juicy stuff, far as how they misapplied the text, how they started using it and contended. But I will save that for later. Okay, there is a time I'm going to talk about that and how that has been misapplied, inshallah, with the help of Allah and the assistance of Allah. I want to just touch on there were 3 stages that, if you paid attention to, Brother Akil Ingram laid down in regards to data. Okay, that data, which was that raw data, which is known as knowledge. Okay, and that first stage, without application. Okay, without faith, which was another thing that I like that he pointed out. Okay, and this that first stage of collecting data, there is a quality or attribute that is associated with that stage. All right, and that is arrogance. Okay, that is arrogance, something that you cannot escape in that beginning stage. Okay, I'm just touching on this. So I'm gonna go back. I just touched on this real quick, and then After a person is able to move forward within that first stage of collecting data, all right, raw data, just knowledge, application. If he's make it to the second stage, which is now understanding of a little bit understanding of that data, of that knowledge, okay, then with that understanding should come something else, which is application, which is application to that knowledge. Now that knowledge will be coupled with actions. Okay. Then if he make it to the third stage, which is wisdom, all right, which is wisdom and how to properly apply that knowledge. You understand? Then the individual will have been successful, will have the tawfiq from Allah Azza wa Jal to be successful in those endeavors. And I think those three stages was laid out very nice. If you paid attention to what he was saying, you would catch a lot of things. I want to just uh, touch on the first thing. And the first thing is from my notes is that we have to understand it's not about new Muslim or old Muslim. Okay? It's not about that. Even though the framework is laid out in those stages, I want us to get past this concept of new Muslim versus a Muslim who is a veteran. Okay? Because when we're looking at Muslim, we're going to look at a practicing Muslim versus a non-practicing Muslim. A educated Muslim, okay, with the proper education, practicing with the proper application, versus a Muslim who doesn't have the proper education, therefore cannot ascertain the proper application. There are two differences. You see that? So I want to make that understood here. There is a difference between those two individuals. And it doesn't matter how many years you have been in Islam if you, one, weren't properly educated in those years, and two, because if you weren't properly educated, you couldn't properly apply what you knew. All right. So now that we got the new Muslim, the old Muslim out the way, so we're talking about Muslims who have a Muslim who was exposed to the proper education, therefore gave them the chance to be able to properly apply. All right. Now, at the beginning stage for each of these individuals, you're going to have to understand it's a quest. It's a quest. We are all embarking on a quest. The whole thing of Islam is a quest. Okay. A quest consists of a journey. All right. There are many verses in the Quran where Allah Jalla wa'ala talks about and allude to the journey. Okay. And Allah Jalla wa'ala says, in the khayr zad, all right. In the khayr zad taqwa. And he talks about the zad, this journey. And he said the best of those provisions for this journey will be none other than taqwa. All right. And taqwa, as the scholars explained, there are many definitions for it. And this is not the time to go into all each and every definition, but the most basic one is fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all right, by doing those things which he has commanded and staying away from those things which he has prohibited. But it's to put a barrier between yourself and the anger and the punishment of Allah. All right, most simple, simplistic explanation. But then Allah Jalla wa'ala also says in another surah, he says, وَلِذَلِكَ وَلِبَاسُ تَقْوَى ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ, and that the best garment that one can wear is the garment of taqwa. All right, and there are many ayats in the Quran where Allah advises us to fear Him. Now, one might say, how do you begin to fear Allah with taqwa? How do you begin? It takes knowledge. All right. So this quest, the entire theme, brothers and sisters, is about knowledge. What type of knowledge? That's what we're going to talk about. That's what Brother Akil Ingram told us, that the knowledge that we need to be thinking of is the knowledge which is legislative. Okay, this is the commendable knowledge that Allah Jalla wa'ala is talking about and His Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is talking about. Okay, that particular knowledge. So knowledge is a journey. You're going to be embarking upon this journey until you meet your Rabb. That's just the reality. There is no getting around that. Okay. Now that we understand that, why is I'm bringing this to the forefront? Because you shouldn't be thinking in terms of the layman, the new person who comes into Islam, and that this is only their quest, and exclude yourself. Okay, no, you are going to still embark upon learning. Okay, and this is why you find the likes of scholars like Imam Ahmed, who always walked around, okay, with the ink pot, and he would make a famous statement, from the mehbara ila mekbara, all right, meaning from the ink pot to what? To the graveyard. In other words, he was saying seeking knowledge into death. And this is something that all of them, you find that this is what they have done. Seek knowledge until death. All right? Okay? Because without proper knowledge, there's no proper worship. And Allah tells Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Quran, فَاعْبُدُ اللَّهَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. Worship your Lord until the certainty comes to you. The ulama of tafsir, they said that yaqeen in this verse means the minor death. Okay, so the point of mentioning this verse is that Allah says, "Fa'budullah," worship Allah, O Muhammad. You have to worship Him upon ilm. Allah also tells Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Fa'lam annahu la ilaha illallah." In Surah Muhammad, know again, advising the Prophet sallallahu with ilm, knowledge first and foremost. Okay, before not know that none has the right to worship Allah, before you can seek forgiveness and everything. So knowledge is there. Even Imam Bukhari extracted from this that knowledge precedes speech and actions. There are many, many, many verses which indicates that knowledge is at the forefront. Type. Sheikh Bekr Abu Zayd has a beautiful book which is known as the Etiquettes of Seeking Knowledge. All right, and we're not going into the entire book at all. I just want to mention about this knowledge that we need to understand that all of us are obliged to have. Okay, and that is al-ilm al-ibadah. The first thing he says is that the etiquettes with which the student should adorn his or herself with. Okay, and to understand, the first thing is that knowledge is ibadah. Okay, he says the first principle of the fundamental principles in this hilya, rather it is a command which is sought after, is that you know that knowledge is ibadah. Shaykh al-Dimin, rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi, he says that knowledge is worship, no doubt. He says rather it is the most noblest acts of worship. Okay, and that it is the most virtuous acts of worship. Okay, and to the point that Allah Jalla wa Ala has made it a portion within the way of Allah. Okay, He has made it a portion for jihad in the way of Allah. In other words, seeking knowledge has become a portion, a means of fighting jihad. Okay, seeking knowledge with Allah Azza wa Jal and this messenger is a means to fight, it's a way of fighting. Okay, this is what Shaykh Uthaymeen is saying. And then he brings the verse where Allah Jalla wa Ala says in Surah At-Tawbah, which is the 9th chapter of the Quran, وَمَا كَانَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ لِيَنْفِرُوا كَافَّةً فَلَوْلَا نَفَرَ مِنْ كُلِّ فِرْقَةٍ مِنْهُمْ طَائِفَةٌ لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا فِي الدِّينِ. And this is the point of the verse. All right, so Allah Jalla wa Ala was telling that all the believers do not go out to fight a physical war. Let a group from amongst you remain behind. For what purpose? To teach the deen to those who are behind. Do not let all of you go out and fight, but let a group from amongst you to teach the deen to those who remain behind. So Shaykh Uthaymeen is saying that this verse is showing us that what? If Allah have appointed a group of people to teach, then part of that teaching is a part of fighting in the way of Allah. Do you catch? You get what he's saying? All right. So here he says the point that we want to look at is liyatafaqahu. The word is liyatafaqahu. يعني بذلك طائفة قائمة, meaning that that established party that stayed behind is going to be the party that's going to what? Teach individuals the deen. Okay, he says, وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, and the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم says in the authenticated hadith, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم says, من يريد الله به خير يفقهه في الدين. Whoever Allah Jalla wants good for, He give him thick of the religion. Okay, فإذا رزق الله thick. So Shaykh Uthaymeen continues, he said, if Allah provides you with this understanding with in regards to His deen, okay, and I want you to understand that because this is a risk. Notice what he says, razaqa. Okay, this is a risk. Okay, knowledge is a provision, and the knowledge we're talking about here, brothers and sisters, knowledge of the deen, legislative knowledge. Okay, If Allah provides someone with legislative knowledge, not raw data. Fiqh does not mean raw data. Not like our brother Akil Ingram was saying. Okay? Having information is just having raw data. Not having proper understanding of that data, of that knowledge, will be just information. Do you understand? Proper understanding is fiqh, okay, of the legislation. Proper understanding. Not everybody who are exposed to Islamic information have proper understanding. Therefore, their application is not proper. It is incorrect. Do you understand the difference now? Now you can probably get a little bit of insight of where we probably went wrong in these 25 to 30 years. You'll probably see because we might have been exposed to books. We might have been exposed to the manhaj, the methodology of the Salaf. We might have been exposed to who the Salaf were in bits and spurts and bits. We might have been exposed to this or exposed to that. But in regards to the proper knowledge and the proper understanding, all of us may not have been exposed to that. And that takes something. I'm going to talk about what that takes. All right. That takes something. And that's a ni'mah from Allah as well to get that. And everybody is blessed to have that. All right. So the Sheikh, he says that this is the fiqh, all right, that you've been provided. He says the fiqh here that is intended is what is the knowledge, the legislative knowledge, al-ilm al-shar'i. فَيَدْخُلُ فِيهِ عِلْمَ عَقَائِد. And what is included in legislative knowledge is the knowledge of belief, aqidah, aqa'id, and tawheed. All of that is included in legislative knowledge, and other than that. So he says, if you have seen that Allah Jalla wa Ala have blessed you with this, then rejoice with good. Okay? He says, because Allah Jalla wa Ala wanted good for you. Okay? Allah wanted good for you. Ibn Ahmed, he brings a statement of Ibn Ahmed. Ibn Ahmed said that knowledge لا يعدله شيء لمن صحة نيته. That knowledge يعني لا يعدله شيء, that nothing will, there will be anything equal to it, okay? Except what? Except for the one who has a correct intention. And this is the first point I want to bring in my commentary. Okay, the first point I would like to bring in this commentary is going to be extracted from this statement of Ibn Ahmed. Knowledge, brothers and sisters, we, no matter what level you at, whether you want to call yourself a new Muslim or not, you have to have the proper intention when it comes to legislative knowledge. Why are you learning? Who are you learning for? What is the purpose of you learning? This is not something you can lay at the feet of another individual. This is what I want to make clear. You can't point your fingers at people who are contending with the scholars who failed or made mistakes and who will continue to make mistakes and say they are the reason why I begin to learn this way. No. Why are you learning? Who are you learning for? This is individual thing. It's upon each and every one of us to have the correct intention. This is why Ibn Ahmed said what? Knowledge, there's nothing equated to it. There's not anything equated to it except for the one who has a sound intentions. They said, وَكَيْفَ تُصِحُّ النِّيَّةَ يَا أَبَا Abdullah. All right, his kunya was Abu Abdullah. Or he had a son named Abdullah. So they said, how do a person correct his intention? All right, so the students that was listening to him make this statement, they asked him, well, how do you correct your intentions? Right, which is a respectable question, by the way. He says here, he says, they do this by intending to remove the ignorance from himself and from others. So he starts with the intention that he's going to remove the ignorance which he found himself in when he learns this legislative knowledge. And by moving the ignorance from himself, he's also, before he begin to teach anyone else, because part of moving that ignorance from yourself is not just learning, there are also application of learning. So you have to act off of it, okay? Then you teach others, all right? Then you teach others, all right? Shaykh Uthaymeen, rahmatullahi ta'ala, continues. I'm getting ready to stop, brothers and sisters. So he says, in addition to this, there is a condition for the act of worship to be accepted. So if knowledge is worship, that's what we're talking about. legislative knowledge. Then for worship to be accepted, there are two conditions. Why do the scholars keep reiterating? Why are they making this being redundant? It's important that we understand this for our own sake. Why? It's because we need to know that anything that you want to become strong in, anything that you want to remain persistent in, you have to constantly go over. All right? That's the same thing like Al Fatiha. You want all of your knowledge to be strong and strengthened like Al Fatiha. What do I mean by that? You recite Al Fatiha for those whom Allah guide and bless to pray 5 times a day over 17 times. By you offering, Allah even call it the Sab'a al Mathani. He calls it the oft repeated verses. By you constantly repeating the 7 verses of Al Fatiha, right? You know it just like that. You know it, all right? And it sticks. This is how well organized you want your knowledge to be. Your knowledge of Allah, Jalla wa ala, the knowledge of the deen, etc. You want it to be this organized. But it's not going to get like that if you don't have constant repetition. This is why you cannot, for lack of better words, take your foot up off the gas. Okay? You can't do that. You're going to be seeking knowledge until you reach or until you meet Allah. That's how it's normally going to go. So, constantly repeating, brothers and sisters. That's why it's important that we are being reiterated this. 2 conditions. Ikhlasu niyyata lillah. That's for an act of worship to be accepted. You have to make sure that your intention is sincerely for Allah. Okay? This is important. This is extremely important. This is the part that a lot of us overlook. We get so caught up in politics, so caught up in social dynamics. This is a social problem. Why are we not focused on this? So caught up in everything else besides the raw ingredients you would need to succeed. Do you understand? You can't overlook this. Where did we go wrong? In this first step, we went wrong in not constantly guarding our intention. That's where we went wrong at, no matter in what level that we are, whether we were the ones teaching knowledge or whether we were the ones receiving knowledge. We went wrong, brothers and sisters, by not guarding this part. And that's extremely important. In no circumstances can you never stop or let your guard down from guarding your intentions. Many of the Salaf of the past, like Sufyan al-Thawri, like Sufyan al-Unayna, all of them constantly keep making that. I find myself when I'm narrating a hadith, I need 2 intentions. I find myself wrestling with this fact that I need intentions. Why is they keep mentioning about intentions? Because this is extremely important. Why are you doing what you're doing? If you were doing it purely for Allah's sake, as you sometimes may claim, then there will be certain things that are associated with it that comes along with it. All right? That isn't there. And this is why we find ourselves doing something, which I'm going to quote a little bit later, what we do, inshallah. Tayyib. So that's the first thing. Then he brings a verse which makes it clear for us to understand. Surah Bayyinah, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصًا لَهُ الدِّينَ. Allah says, and we're not commanded except that they should worship. That وَمَا أُمِرُوا, it were not commanded except they should worship Allah alone. Okay? Making their deeds sincerely for Him. So sincerity, brothers and sisters, in one intention is the first step. Okay? You got to constantly be on top of that. And this is also the first condition for an act of ibadah to be accepted. And a single hadith, okay, which is famous, famous hadith that we all probably heard, came across before with, is the hadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen Umar bin Khattab anhu, where the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are judged by intentions. Al-Hadith. All right. Now, I'm getting ready to stop with Sheikh Uthaymeen's kalam. I just want to mention some things he's going to mention here. So Sheikh Becker, he says that once the knowledge of the sincerity of the intentions is lost, okay, then this noble act of ibadah, meaning seeking knowledge, which is one of the noblest acts of worship, he says what happens, it moved from being the noblest acts of worship to now being one of the most opposing. And it goes to being the most opposing situation, because an individual can start off with a sincere intention that they want to learn knowledge, this legislative knowledge, but then it changes, their intention changes. If that sincerity is diminished at any extent or any amount, it contaminates, it corrupts, it spoils, okay, that knowledge. And that's where a lot of people are not really looking at. You want to know where we went wrong. It's simple. You want to know where we went wrong. We went wrong no matter what stage we are, like we said, if we're teaching or we're receiving. We're going to always go wrong if this part is diminished. The sincerity for the intention of what you're doing something. All right. He says, what happens then? It does, يحطم العلم مثل, for example, it now, if it's not done for Allah's sake, pay attention to what he's saying. If the knowledge that you seek, legislative knowledge, is not done for Allah's sake, then whose sake would it be done? It will be riyah. This is what he's telling you. If you're not seeking Islamic knowledge, legislative knowledge about Allah, meaning Aqidah, about Tawheed, etc., you're not seeking this knowledge for Allah's sake. It's riyah. Do you get it now? That's how dangerous it is. If it's not done for Allah's sake, then what's it going to be? It's going to be riyah. Look what he's saying. He's saying that it's going to be riyah. Riyah is shirk. We know this from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Or riyah or ikhlas, or it's going to be what we call a riyah within the sincerity. For example, like a tasmir, making yourself be heard. For example, saying, I have learned this, or I have memorized this. Going around telling everybody, announcing it from the top of your lungs. I learned this, I know this, I have memorized this, etc. For what purpose? This is why it's important that we guard our intentions. Constantly review your intentions. Why are you doing what you're doing? You can never let your guard down off that one. And if we do that, and if we stay on top of that, then that, inshallah ta'ala, should help us in being successful. So Shaykh Uthaymeen, he lays down, if someone was to come to ask now, because now you frighten us up. I'm a little frightened here. You frighten us up with the sincerity being so strong, right? He says, someone might ask, then how do you make yourself be sincere in regards to you seeking this knowledge, this quest? How do you make yourself be sincere? Shaykh Uthaymeen says, okay, then this will happen in the following affairs. And then we're going to stop after we mention these affairs. The first affair, he said, is that one should intend, by seeking this knowledge, the compliance to the command of Allah. I'm only learning about this legislative knowledge so that I can carry out what Allah commanded me to do. That's what I'm learning it for. Okay? Allah ordered me to pray. So if I learn how to make the prayer, do the wajibat, do the pillars, do the shurut, then I have to utilize them to do it. I have to learn it for that purpose of carrying it out, to apply it. Okay? He says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded you with that. As Allah says, let me quote the verse I quoted earlier. Know that none has the right to worship Allah. He says, يحث سبحانه وتعالى على علمي وحث على شيء يستلزم محبته والرضا به وأمره به. He says here Allah Jalla wa Ala has encouraged that one have knowledge. And he have encouraged a thing, making that thing which necessitates his love and his pleasure with it, and he commands with it. He says the second affair is that the person should intend with that to preserve Allah's legislation. Because preserving the Sharia of Allah, yakuna bita'allum, it only can be done by way of a person learning. وَيَكُونَ بِالْحِفْظِ فِي الصُّدُورِ, and it only can be done by way of learning and also preserving that which is in the breast, memorization. وَيَكُونَ كَذَلِكَ بِكِتَابَةٍ, likewise preserving it by way of writing. Kitabatul kutub, like writing books, etc. He says, meaning preserving the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, you're going to find it normally written in books, or you're going to find the people who are memorizers, like Al-Hafiz, all right, like when you hear Al-Hafiz, Baghdadi, and so forth. These terms have meanings. Not talking about memorizing the Quran, but people who have preserved the Hadith. Okay, people have preserved the Hadith. Okay, we're not talking about people who just written them down. People had narrations and chains and the sanid's in their breasts, brothers and sisters, which was the original way. All right, which was in their breasts. Shaykh Uthaymeen have a beautiful piece where he talks about the writing strengthening the memory. All right, whenever you want the memory to be strengthened, the writing is an assistant tool to help out with that. refer to his tafsir that he did on Surah Alaq, all right, Surah 96. Type anyway, he goes here, he says, وَثَالِثَ and he says the third thing is you want to intend by way of that not only preserving the Sharia, but protecting and defending the Sharia. All right? Defending the Sharia. That should be your goal too. Your intention is you always want to protect and defend the deen. But you can't defend the deen out of ignorance. You only defend the deen out of what? Knowledge. And you have to do it in the most beautiful way. In other words, you have to have etiquettes with defending the deen. Someone disrespects Allah, someone disrespects the Prophet ﷺ, you're not defending the deen by becoming so emotional. Yes, it's natural that you will be emotional, but it's not defending the deen by you just acting all pure emotions. That's not it. You have to be able to use knowledge. All right? You have to be able to use knowledge in order to repel and defend the deen. All right? I remember Sheikh Uthaymeen mentioned in another place, he says, if a person was upon innovation in this book called Kitab al-Ilm, and a person was to walk in a library filled with books of the Sunnah, and he was to talk about his innovation, how can the books defend themselves? They're not going to get up and just open themselves up and start defending themselves. So a person learning knowledge, one of the things of after removing the ignorance from himself and from others is to defend the deen. So he should learn that way he can defend those books and contain within them, and he can defend and preserve the Sharia by way of refuting that person who brings innovation or invents something in it. Okay, fine. And he says, he says, for example, if it weren't for the scholars, then the Sharia would not have been preserved, and no one will have defended. Okay, so this reason we found the likes of Shaykh Islam, Ibn Taymiyyah, and other than them from the people of knowledge, those who have repelled the people of innovation, they have explained and clarified to us the misguidance of their innovation, and we find them achieving and ascertaining a lot of good. This is because they learned the knowledge, okay, to preserve the deen. Last but not least, and we'll stop here, where he mentions the fourth thing is, and all of this, by the way, is he talking about to make your sincerity in regards to seeking knowledge. That's what he's talking about. 4 fears he gave us. All right, he gave us that what 4 fears he gave us. That you're learning your intentions that so you comply to the command of Allah. Second, that you intend to preserve the Sharia of Allah. Thirdly, you're to protect and defend it. And fourthly, that you follow the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is not possible that you can do that until you do what? Until you learn this legislation. All right, this legislation. Type. So now that we got the first step up, the sincerity of intentions, let's move to my next note, commentary that I want to mention that what we went over in episode 4 is that now what should happen? For all of this stuff to make any sense, you need to be guided to a teacher. Any one of us need to have a teacher. All right, and I mentioned this on that episode, the statement of Ibn Qayyim when he was talking about the Rabbani, the Alam al-Rabbani. Okay, and he was talking about the daily disease of ignorance, and he said that the cure is going to be found in 2 things. And he said the book and the Sunnah, but the person who's supposed to extract that cure and who's supposed to administer the remedy, which is the book and the Sunnah, is none other than a Alim al-Rabbani. All right, and he talks about the Alim al-Rabbani, and Allah talks about the Alim al-Rabbani when Allah Jalla makes it clear that ما كان لبشر أن يؤتي الله كتاب وحكم والنبوة, right? أن يقول للناس كونوا عبادا لي ولكن بكل عباد لي من دون الله ولكن كونوا عباد الله ولكن كونوا ربانيين ما كنتم تعلمون وما كنتم تعلمون الكتاب. So in that particular verse, Allah Jalla wa'ala highlights that it's not for any human being which Allah has granted him prophethood, given him the book, given him the Sunnah, etc., that he's going to come and tell the people to worship me besides Allah. Rather, he's going to tell you to worship Allah, not be his servants, but he's going to tell you to be Rabbaniyun. Those who are Rabbani. Shaykh Uthaymeen says the Rabbani is the individual, and this is not just Shaykh Uthaymeen's statement. Actually, you can go to Kitab al-Ilm, the book of knowledge in the Sahih of Imam Bukhari, where Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma made it clear and explained what the Rabbani is, okay? And that you should aspire to be a Rabbani. All right, so the person who begins with the smaller issues before the larger. After that episode, I seen that there was a lot of discourse that were going back and forth, which was good, by the way. And I have nothing against anyone that was giving their, laying out their 2 cents of how they feel. And we start to go into this issue about fiqh and the difference of opinion, ikhtilaf, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's engaging, I know, and it is interesting that we might have felt that in some way we should touch on it, some way we should not. But I want you to pay attention why the importance of having a teacher is so important, because a lot of those things you wouldn't even be worried about at certain stages. All right, because you have a proper what they call tahsil ilm. All right, something that we in the West really we do know about in academic areas and other disciplines, such as if we're real good in school, or we go through the Western education and we see how they go from one part to another part, like A, B, C, or we go from, you understand, this preliminary area, you get your bachelor's, you get this, you get that, or you go to it from the elementary school up to the middle, up to the high school, et cetera, and you see those stages. It's important that that's the same thing you're going to see in your knowledge in Islam. Okay, you're going to see that there are stages in how you're supposed to learn, no matter whoever you are, and it makes your knowledge organized. So there are things that you should be beginning with, and there are things that you shouldn't begin with. You understand? There are things that you should begin with, and there are things you shouldn't begin with. And whenever a Muslim wants to know what he or she should begin with, if they don't have a proper teacher on hand right at the moment, no matter whoever you are, then you always stop and go back to the hadith of Jibril, because it lays it out for you what you should be starting with. You understand? It's not all about going to the intricate knowledge, to the furu, the subsidiary. All right? It's not about going that. Remember, your quest begins with spirituality, which trickle down to the physical. Okay? You want your physical to change, you want your physical reality to change, then you have to work on your spiritual first. All right? And that begins with the heart. Okay? That begins with the heart. All right? You want that to be worked on first. And this is what you're going to see when you read the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ and his dawah and how he gave dawah. You're going to see that's what he done. This is what you're going to see when you hear Allah, as Aisha Anha laid it out for us, have Allah started with the prohibitions first, the people wouldn't have done it. And you've seen that Allah Jalla wa Ala begin by working on their hearts with the Aqidah, with the Tawheed, with the spirituality first, before jumping off on anything else. If you look at one of the commands that was laid out before anything else was salat. Jihad wasn't instituted. Hajj wasn't instituted. Okay, zakat, there's a difference between the ulama whether or not it first started in Mecca or Medina. But that wasn't instituted. Salat, brothers and sisters, and it didn't start off with 5. There were 2 raka'ats that Jibril taught the Prophet ﷺ. It was stages. It was a developmental process that had to take place. The spirituality had to be a part of each process of that stage. Do you understand? And this is where it tells you the difference what Brother Akil Ingram was explaining. When a person is collecting data or knowledge with no proper understanding, okay, no fear associated with it, no humility associated with it, none of those parts are associated with it, what happens? You see the difference, right? Because the spirituality part is missing. You understand? A part of keeping the spirituality part is that you want to always keep in the back of your mind, what? My intentions. Why is I'm learning this? Always. Am I seeking Allah's face with this? Okay? You get it? The second thing is I'm applying and so forth, meaning I'm following that of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ for another act to be accepted. So I mentioned the second part, you need a teacher. Now the teacher needs to have qualities. Okay? From my commentary, mentioned that the teacher should be a Rabbani, that he start with the smaller issues before the larger. Okay. All right? You don't go from beginner to advance. All right. And for those who don't know, Ibn Qudama did a nice, beautiful job, rahmatullah ta'ala alayh, and his system that he had laid down in approaching fiqh. He had a beginner's book, right? He had it. He had a beginner's book. He had an intermediate book. He had an advanced book, and he had an actual higher advanced book from there. Starting off a simple format, teaching us to organize our knowledge. So in the beginning book, for example, he had talked about salat he had just mentioned the positions without mentioning any dalil for what he's saying. Okay? When you pray, hold your hands beneath your navel. Okay, that's a position out there. We're not talking about difference of opinions right now. We're not talking about any of that. That's not what the new person should be worrying about at that time. Whether or not what's opinion is this or what's opinion, no, it's not what you need. You're going to confuse them. And you don't want to confuse anyone. Do you understand? You're going to confuse them. So he just laid out without mentioning any proof or dalil or opinion. Then in his second book, he mentioned a dalil. Okay? And dalil, brothers and sisters, that also you have to understand that there are subcategories and then there are categories in regards to what is actual dalil. Okay? Where you will learn in usul fiqh. That's why there are disciplines to Islam. All right. So there is a school that is taking place that has already been laid out for us. And this is why the teacher is very important. Being guided to the teacher. Okay. You're going to learn some of these things, inshallah. If you have the correct intention, you should embark upon that. Tell you. So yeah, and then he mentioned in the third one, he had mentioned opinion. All right. And then you normally have to understand that the opinion, sometimes you're going to find two opinions and so forth like that, ikhtilaf and so forth. Then he had mentioned those opinions, and you might say Imam Shafi have two opinions within his school, right? That might not be the actual opinion of Imam Shafi himself. It can be one of his top students. Do you understand? So there's a little difference there. All right. So, and then moving on. So that stuff right there, like I said, that was a class in and of itself. But I just wanted to mention how he laid out a format to organize your knowledge and not confuse the people in the beginning stages. This is all about being a alim or rabbani. There are two qualities I want to mention that Sheikh Uthaymeen talks about that comes in the Quran, that when it comes to a teacher, when it comes to any action or whatever, these two qualities we should try to adorn to have. Okay, if you get a teacher, you want to make sure that your teacher has these two qualities. When it comes to doing an act, you want to make sure that you fulfill these two qualities in this act. No doubt the two qualities known as al-qawi and al-amin. All right, meaning that you want to have the strength, okay, and you also want to have the trustworthiness. So any teacher that is teaching you, you want to make sure that they are strong within their knowledge, all right, and that they are trustworthy in regards to their knowledge. Shaykh Uthaymeen says here that these two qualities, every doer is in need of them. Just as Allah Jalla wa'ala says about the daughter of the Sahibul Madyan, when she said about Musa to her father that indeed he is the best one for you to hire, for he has the qualities of being strong and trustworthy. All right. He said that these two descriptions, the two qualities, are something that is sought after in every action. Okay. He says, because if one were to miss out on having the strength, then the person would not be able to acquire the action. Okay. Meaning from the point of being unable to do so. So they should be strong. He says, وَإِذَا وُجِدَتِ الْقُوَّةُ, and if we find that the person is strong, however, they missing out on the trustworthiness, then this also will delay the action for the reason that the action now can consider what we call deception can be a part of it. If someone is not trustworthy, you're not going to trust them, right? They can betray you. Do you understand? So you want to make sure that the person who's teaching you has these two things. They're strong within the knowledge they're presenting. And a part of that being strong is that they understand it properly and they are applying it. Do you see? They understand it properly and they are applying it. And they are strong within that method. And that they are trustworthy, that they won't call you to themselves, but they will call you and connect you to your Rabb, which is something that we need to be etched into us. You always want to make sure that the teacher in front of you is connecting you to your creator and not to himself. All right? That's important to understand and make it distinguish. That's where I believe a lot of the problems have went wrong for us here in the West, is that we started to be attached to personalities more so than being attached to the creator. We was attached to the creation. And the personalities that was in front of us, because they may or may not understood correctly, that they had to make it explicitly clear that you need to be connected to the creator and not to the creation. Something that you see in our hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that he constantly made it clear that the people be connected to Allah and not to him. The Prophet done that. If you look at the Prophet ﷺ behavior, he constantly did that. When he was sitting in the gathering, he would not sit in the middle to be the center of it. What is this? Tawal there. Humbleness. He did not place himself in the center of the gathering. Why? That when people, they observed, when they came to the gatherings of the Prophet ﷺ, they weren't able to distinguish who was the messenger of Allah in the gathering. You see the etiquette? They weren't able to distinguish. No arrogance there. You understand? You see the etiquette there. So they weren't able. He didn't make himself stand out to stand out. When he connected the people, he told them, don't exaggerate. Don't exaggerate me as the people, the Christians and the Jews did with their prophets. Don't over-exaggerate me. I am Abdullah. These are key elements that we need to look for in a teacher. You understand? Connect me to the creator and not to the creation. Do you understand? So this is important that you get that. I think that we were wrong there a little bit, not understanding that point of connecting us to the creator. So you want to make sure that these qualities are there, and you want to have a teacher, because the teacher is going to help you organize your knowledge. You understand? It's going to help you organize your knowledge. Now, moving on to the third point that I wanted to bring from my commentary, which is the juicy part that you guys might want to hear. There is many statements and there are many ahadiths. This one that I'm going to quote is from At-Tirmidhi. He brings this hadith from Ka'b ibn Malik. All right, and Ka'b ibn Malik and the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have said, "Man talab al-ilma liyu jariya." He mentioned here liyu jariya bihi al-ulama, aw li yumariya bihi sufaha, aw yasrifa bihi wujuh an-nasi ilayhi adkhalahu Allah an-nar. Sheikh Al-Albani classed this hadith to be Hasan. No doubt. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever seeks knowledge in order to impress the scholars, all right, or to argue with the foolish, or to turn the people's attention towards himself, Allah will admit him into the hellfire. This hadith scares me. There are many other narrations similar like this. Because what are we talking about again? It seems like everything goes back to this. If you can catch on in the beginning of this hadith, everything goes back to this. Again, whoever seeks knowledge, and then he mentioned three things, right? In other words, he's talking about sincerity, intentions, having the correct intention to begin with when seeking the knowledge. Whoever seeks knowledge, inshallah, whoever seeks knowledge in order to impress the scholars. Some people, what they want to do when they learn this knowledge, they learn it for reasons other than noble reasons and for the right reasons. Do you understand? Some people want to be raised in status by learning this knowledge or connecting this knowledge. Some people want to impress other academics. See, I told you I'm intelligent. You see? And this is what they harper on. And this is why they never really get the taste, the sweetness of knowledge. You see? The sweetness of knowledge is not memorizing the narrations. It's not memorizing the ayats from the book of Allah. That's not the sweetness of it. You think you tasting the sweetness, but you're not. The sweetness is actually what is produced, what is the result of having that knowledge. Did it transform you? Did it transform you to a better person? Are you better because of it? You see? If you haven't transformed from the way you were before being exposed to the knowledge, and you're still the same or even worse, and you're not better, then you never taste the sweetness of that knowledge. You never taste it. And how many people are deprived of that? Because of their intentions was incorrect from the beginning. So look what the hadith is saying. Don't learn knowledge so that you can impress the scholars or the higher ups or the academics. Don't learn it for that purpose. Don't learn it so that you can argue with the foolish. I know and you don't know. Okay, I'm gonna argue with every layman I come across because he don't know this issue. She don't know this issue. So I'm gonna make myself sound superior, right? Or I'm gonna learn it so that the people can turn their attention towards me. Notice how all of this is not learning for the sake of Allah. No, learn for the sake of Allah. Learn for the sake of Allah. Brothers and sisters, we have made a big problem when we start running around here with our heads cut off, giving people celebrity status because we quote unquote called them students. It went right to their head. You understand? A student is not running around talking about call me a student. Do you understand? No student is running around saying I'm Tulab such and such. I'm from the Tulab. I'm a Talabu such and such. No, you get no fame for that. The fame that you do get is with Allah. And you are known amongst the what? The inhabitants of the heavens. That should be enough for you. Do you understand? There are too many statements from the Salaf explaining that to us. I wish that I was a blacksmith, or I wish I wasn't known. So the person who learn and come across these things, they know that they should always be humble. Do you understand? I don't want to be known for knowing this. You understand? I don't want to be raised for knowing this, even though I'm going to be raised and elevated because Allah raised and elevated me. But it's my job. The more the people know me, the more people, is for me to be more humbled. You see, more humbled. And you don't get this by raw data. Collecting raw knowledge will never expose you to humbleness. You get this, brothers and sisters, again, about what we're talking about. Taqwa, understanding, proper application to have that humility you need to have. Sincerity. Sheikh Salih Fawzan, Hafidullah, he commented on the hadith of the Prophet that we all heard. I'm going to end this talk with this so that we can see how people can tend and mess up in this stage, inshallah ta'ala. And that is that he mentioned that the Prophet says, Min husn al-mara'i, or min husn al-islam al-mara'i, tarakahu ma la ya'anihi, a hadith of Hassan collected by At-Tirmidhi and other than him. All right, he says that the Messenger of Allah said, Abu Hurairah narrated, that from the perfection, okay, of a person's Islam is leaving off that which does not concern him. Okay, Sheikh Salih Fawzan, interesting enough, his explanation to this hadith it's interesting, and I think it applies to what I'm getting ready to try to point out here. He mentioned that the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, a person leaving off that which does not concern him, he says from this is that a person, okay, that a person will cause his or her deen to diminish if he or she was to enter into arenas which is not from his specialty, is not his expertise, is not his field. He shouldn't be in that area. Do you get it now? No one is telling you to start talking about siyasa, politics, or about the mechanics of how Islam runs or don't run, or how the government should be governing the people, or how the scholar should be teaching, or how this field should be that. No one is telling you to enter that field or that expertise if this is not your field. If you haven't begun to study on this, if you haven't even begun to be acknowledged from the people of that field, then why are you talking about it? Min husn al-Islami mar'i. From the perfection of a person, Islam is leaving off that which does not concern him. That doesn't concern you. This is, and it's interesting because what he's going to say, look what he's going to say. He's going to say, well, it's not from him. He says, he says, إلي لا من نهاية الشرع ولا من نهاية الخلق والذي ينبغي على إنسان يعتني بدينه ولا يعتني بما ليس له فيه فائدة. Look what the Sheikh is saying. He's saying that, in other words, the person is not, from the perspective, he's not obligated or responsible in regards to this from the perspective of the legislation, nor from the perspective of the creation. And it is befitting, he says, that which is befitting or incumbent upon the person is that he concern himself or she concern herself with her deen or his deen, and that he do not concern himself with something that do not have in it a benefit or something which he is not responsible for, meaning that he is not charged or obligated to carry it out. فَبِذَلِكَ يَسْتَرِيحُ وَيَرِيحُ النَّاسِ أَيْضًا. If a person does this, then by way of that, that person will find enjoy a rest, and the people will also find rest. فَلَوْ أَنَّ النَّاسَ سَلَكُوا هَذَا الْمَسْلَكَ عَظِيمٌ لَأَصْلُ الْوِئَامُ وَالْوِفَاقُ وَالْمُحَبَّةُ. And if the people were to traverse upon this path, this tremendous path, in other words, minding their own business and sticking to what they know, is what the Sheikh basically is saying here, they will be able to achieve a lot of love and affection. You understand? However, you will find that people don't do this. They don't stay in their lane. And this is where I've seen that in the second stage, how abstract knowledge had become applied. Because we was learning this raw data, right? And we were collecting the information. We were so eager. And we'd come across a hadith, we'd come across an athar, we'd come across an ayah, right? And we live in certain environments, right? And not taking into consideration that our fahm, our fiqh, plays a major component in understanding what we were coming across from the data. So when we was presented with a problem or a problem have arose, we didn't go back to the proper people to investigate or to deal with that issue. Rather, we chose to deal with ourselves and start to apply our limited understanding, which we weren't even seasoned on. And then it's automatic from there, we started to cause harm because that's the result of it. Whenever you enter something you don't have no business entering, whenever you enter a field, you're going to cause, I don't care who you are, including me, whoever, you're going to cause more harm than good. And that's normally what's going to happen. And it's going to be abstract because you don't have the proper understanding. The Prophet ﷺ told the companions, he said that the cure for ignorance is to ask. Allah Jalla wa Ala says, ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. All right? Letting us know that there's nothing wrong with beginning to ask. Ask, brothers and sisters. You don't know, ask. This is not your expertise, ask. Someone come ask you about business. All right? You don't know, ask. Someone asks you about anything you don't know, ask. Okay? And don't assume you know because you got a jutz, 3 jutz, or the entire book of Allah. Don't assume you know because you memorized 40 hadith or Bulugh al-Maram, etc., etc. Don't assume you know. Make sure you have the proper understanding of the text and that the text actually apply to that situation. In other words, you have to know other things such as Arabic. Do you understand? Memorizing the Quran isn't enough. You don't know Arabic because you memorize the Quran. There are many people who don't speak Arabic to this day who don't know Arabic and have memorized the entire Quran from front to back. That doesn't mean you understand. Do you understand? You need to know Arabic because all of the sciences are in Arabic. And what is Dalil? The Kitab and the Sunnah, and then those subcategory branches that you got to learn about. You can't understand the Dalil if you don't understand Arabic. So you need to know Arabic. Another thing you need to also know is the other tools that you need to know, like usul fiqh, which is extremely important because now you need to know how to do istinbat, all right, which is reaching a higher level of being like a mujtahid, which we don't know that. Do you understand? And this is why many of the scholars, especially from the Hanbali fiqh, from the Hanbali madhab or so forth, they talks about the difference of a muqallid, a muttabi', and a mujtahid. All right. And if you don't know what these terms is, then that should already tell you something right there as an indication you shouldn't be speaking. Do you understand? And it's not to beat on you. It should give you incentive to learn, to organize your knowledge. Do you understand? Most of us, including myself, are from the first level, the muqallidun. Most of us, most of the individuals who we call students here in the West, is from the first branch, muqallidun, in most areas in Islam. Some some areas in Islam, they might reach the second stage, which is known as muttabi'. What is a muttabi'? Sheikh Salih Fawzan Hafidhullah explains a muttabi' is someone who can follow the evidence. How can you follow the evidence? In other words, they have the tools to go in and find and follow the evidence that is presented by the ulama on each side. So in other words, if there is an ikhtilaf, a difference of opinion, they can see the evidence that was brought by scholar A, they can see the evidence that was brought by scholar B. They can follow those evidence and see where it's found, this, and that. They still can't make a ruling themselves. They're not mujtahid, but they can at least follow the evidence. You understand? Many of us don't have that ability to follow just the evidence. Many of us are leaning on the understanding of the scholars. Do you understand? And this is why there's two major opinions out there concerning taqleed, blind following being permissible or being impermissible. There are some scholars who say that taqleed, under no circumstances, blind following can be permissible. There are some scholars who say no, blind following is permissible in the beginning until the person reaches the stage of a muttabi'. Because if the person doesn't know, they got to blind follow the scholar that they trust. They have to. And they both use similar arguments with the same ayat. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Interesting, right? They both sides use that argument. So anyway, that's not the time for us to go into that tantrum, but I just want us to understand the importance that we are not at the level we think we are. And we need to be more humble to realize that we need to start studying systematically by finding a teacher, whether you're a new Muslim or not, and begin to organize your knowledge. Okay? Organize your knowledge to prevent contending with the scholars, entering areas that we shouldn't be entering, which many people do. Whether they're imams in the West, you find the imams start talking about talaq, ask questions about divorce, and give answers, which is extremely dangerous. You find administrations here in the West ask about divorce and begin to answer the questions. And it's extremely dangerous. Why? Again, because Brother Akil Ingram was giving us a nice understanding about how to study usul fiqh and what it means to study usul fiqh and how to become a judge. He was telling you that there's basically you were studying the Sharia, the legislation. That's a law. All right. And it's levels to that law. To become a judge, someone who can do such and such, and apply it and make sure that it be carried out. Do you understand? Some individuals don't reach that level where they can force it on others to now apply it. Some people don't reach that. We got to be extremely careful telling individuals. And you see the difference, like Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he would put a rock in his mouth. And this was none of us are stronger than Abu Bakr as-Siddiq or knowledgeable in Islam. But yet look how he behaved and carried himself. That he would not just openly speak about Allah's religion. Period. He would not. He made a famous statement, what sky will cover me? He would not just speak about Allah's deen just to be speaking that passage. We do it all the time because social media or everything, it don't matter. We be arguing with one another, literally, over our opinion that is not worth anything. Your opinion in any science can't worth anything if you didn't reach any level. If you're not a mujtahid where your opinion can actually mean something, if you're not even a scholar and you're not even skilled in that science, you arguing in that science it's nothing. There's no fa'idah there. You are entering areas you don't have no business to enter into in the first place. And it actually might be not only an ayat, but it might be a sin upon you Because now you might speak about Allah's deen without no knowledge, and then you might say something that goes against it. Be careful, man. We're not telling you can't do anything. We're just telling you learn. Learn. That's all you have to do. All the energy you take in going at this one and finding this one on it and this one off it, stop and learn. Let's stop here real quick. He mentioned one last point. He brings the ayat here. I can't go into the whole thing. He says the ayat that he brings to make this even clear. He says in Surah An-Nisa, Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَإِذَا جَاءَهُمْ أَمْرٌ مِنَ الْأَمْنِ أَوْ الْخَوْفِ أَذَاءُوا بِهِ. When the affair reaches them, they from safety and from fear, they make it a public announcement. Talking about how the community behave when something comes, a problem arises within the community. They what they do is, if it's something of touching safety or fear, they make a public announcement of it, meaning they spread it. This is Allah talking now. If they would have returned it back to the messenger, Sheikh Salih Fawzan said, meaning returned it back to the messenger when he was alive, meaning by his person, but after he died, he returned back to his sunnah. He said this is from the affair of the ulama, not from the layman. They are the best to return back to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. He says, وَإِلَىٰ أُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْهُمْ. Allah also said, and to the people who are in charge, like the leaders from amongst them, meaning from the ulama and from those people who are the leaders in positions of leadership and so forth, who can actually make a change and do something about it. This is what Sheikh Fawzan said. He says, وَيَكُونَ لِتَدَكُلُ فِيهِمْ فَائِدَةٌ وَهُلُ أَمَا إِنسَانُ عَادِي. He says, for just an average individual, الَّذِي لَيْسَ لَهُ مُؤَهَّلٌ. This is not his affair. This is not his specialty. وَلَا مُكَلَّفٌ, nor is he charged with this. فَإِنَّ دُخُولَهُ فِيهَا يُفْسِدُهَا. His entering to this affair will cause nothing but corruption, and it will cause more problems amongst the people. This is why he should refer back to the people of knowledge. I know some people might say he should refer back to the people of knowledge. I know some of us might say, well, we can't do nothing in the what's the name, all right? It ain't about you can't do nothing. This deen is based upon fear. What type of fear? The fear of Allah. That's what this deen is based upon. It ain't about you can't do nothing. Why would you want to speak about Allah's religion and you don't know nothing about it? Why you don't have the necessary fear that you're supposed to have? All again begins with that. That's what it's about. It's not about this person trying to control you, they over here trying to control you. No, stop talking about Allah if you don't have knowledge of it. You don't have knowledge of it. You don't know no Arabic. I know. I don't know that. I don't understand that. If you know this, then why are you so unafraid and you feel so brave to speak about Allah's deen? Are you better than Abu Bakr as-Siddiq? Because Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he showed us. Are you better than him? No, you're not better than him. All right? That he wouldn't speak about Allah's deen unless he did what? You're not better than him. And someone who is lesser and lesser than Abu Bakr as-Siddiq is Imam Malik. Imam Malik. A man traveled far just to get the questions of him and his people in that part of that town, just to get the questions answered. He went to a scholar, which you are supposed to advise to go to. And he gets to this scholar and he says to this scholar all of these questions, and majority of the questions he responds by saying, La adri, I don't know. And he says, Subhanallah, anta Imam Malik. You are Imam Malik. Look what he said. I traveled this far and I got to you to ask you all of these questions because they told me to go find the most prolific and knowledgeable scholar. You are famous. Pretty much basically what he's saying. You are famous. And I get to this famous scholar and I ask him these questions. He can't even answer. He's telling me he don't know. But look what Imam Malik said. Imam Malik said, this is amazing, right? This is an amazing story. It's a beautiful story, but look what he said. He quoted the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the angels, right? In Surah Baqarah. Subhanaka la ilma, right? La ilma lana illa bima alamtana, right? That the angels, they said, glorify be unto you, Allah. When Allah Jalla wa Ala told Adam to tell them, when he asked them to name all of these things, and then he told Adam to name, and he taught Adam the names. The angels responded and said, glorify be unto you, far above you anything, that we don't have no knowledge of this except that which you taught us. Then Imam Malik mentioned another verse in the Quran, in Surah Al-Muzammil, where Allah Jalla wa Ala said, indeed we sent down this word weighty. It's heavy and weight. All right? The tafsir of that particular verse is that the companion who was with the Prophet ﷺ riding on his riding beast, that when the revelation came down, he felt the weight on the Prophet ﷺ. It was on his thigh. He felt the weight of himself, how heavy it was. So Imam Malik was explaining to the guy, the questioner, that if this knowledge is that heavy, and that the angels themselves were shy, and they said to Allah, Subhanaka, do not have no knowledge except that what you taught us. Who is Imam Malik to come along now to say something? Who am I? If I don't know, it's best to say that I don't know, because it's half of knowledge. I don't know. And that's the reality where we need to understand. Sincerity and intentions is missing. That's why a lot of people begin to contend with the scholars, and they don't even know that they're doing it. Every time you answer a question that wasn't from your field, you're contending with the expert in that field. Every time you go ahead and deal with certain situations and misapply them and they're not contextualized, you are contending with the people who can badly help because you're in their way. Instead of the student of knowledge attaching to people and connecting them to those individuals who are qualified to deal with those issues and certain forth, this becomes a problem. Do you understand? That becomes a problem. And I see this a lot with us in the West. This is how it becomes a problem, man. And we are no good because we are bigging people's heads up. We're making them think that they gotta answer every single thing. Don't put a noose around somebody's neck. You don't have to do that. And stop thinking because somebody graduated or somebody came from here or somebody came from here that you gotta bombard them with all of these questions. You don't. If you got love and respect for that individual, don't overload them with questions. If they got a scholar that can understand the issues and they can deal with it, research and deal with that, then there's nothing wrong with you presenting them with the information so that they can look up those situations and hopefully we can reach something. And this is why here in the West, we are in need of scholarship. We are in need of scholarship. Know the difference. We're not in need of one man. No one man need to come along and say, okay, this is who we're going to rally behind. I don't agree with that. We are in need of scholarship. So a collective body, and this is not my statement, it's the statement of Sheikh Talib Tawil, it's the statement of Sheikh Hassan Abana, this is the statement of many of the scholars who visit the West, said the same thing, that y'all need to get a group of people or send people over who learn that can go into books of fiqh and deal with certain situations, because y'all know better y'all people than anyone else, and be able to find and address those problems. So if we had a committee, collective committee of scholarship, people who can go in and look into these works and deal with our issues, specifically here in the West, all right, that will help us out tremendously. And maybe we can get some things done by helping out. But we should not be rallying behind one person, because there's no one person that's most knowledgeable of anything, all right? There's no one person most knowledgeable. We shouldn't be doing that. We need a collective help. That's what I wanted to bring on my commentary, inshallah. I know I didn't touch on every single thing that Brother Akil mentioned, but I think I wanted to just touch on those highlighting points that, inshallah ta'ala, brothers and sisters, we are all new Muslims. We are all new Muslims. We are all new Muslims. And a lot of times what we see from our brothers, and may Allah Jalla reward those individuals who were sincere in their efforts but still missed the mark. And may Allah Jalla wa'ala, for those who are evil intentions and evil agendas and cause a lot of devastation and havoc throughout these communities, and they did it intentionally, may Allah deal with them in a manner that is just. If that was the case, sit down, no matter whoever you are, and learn. And learn. That's what we need to do. Every teacher, as Sheikh mentioned, he mentioned that every teacher needs to do what? The way of teaching is that teachers still need to seek knowledge. Sheikh Ibn Baz, he says that every scholar is in need of guidance. Actually, he says every person is in need of guidance, even if he's a scholar. Every one of us in need of guidance. Do you understand? We all don't know. Okay? Don't turn someone away because they don't look like you, because they don't sound like you, and because they might not know the proper etiquettes. Last point I want to bring is manners, manners, manners. We need to learn manners. Every last one of us need to know the proper manners. Many of the Salaf, they would say that we learned manners before we learned the Quran. We need to learn adab. We need to learn adab, etiquettes. And a lot of us don't have adab, including myself. have manners. There's manners in how you ask a question. There's manners in how you sit down. There's a manners how you approach someone of knowledge. There's a manners how you approach knowledge. People don't respect knowledge. All they want to do is argue and bicker. Look at us. We can be talking about one conversation right now in the comment section. I guarantee it goes into an argument. One person says this, one person says this, and then it goes somewhere else. Just look at it. All you gotta do is look at your comments and see how you act and behave. Instead of just realizing manners. Manners. I'm only trying to ascertain. Imam Shafi said, I never enter an argument with my component to win the argument. That's what Imam Shafi said. I never enter an argument or debate so that I can win. He said, I hope that my opponent is able to point out to me where I might went wrong, or that he might introduce me and teach me something. Okay? Or that the point of Allah Jalla wa Ala, actually, what we're talking about, if we're trying to get to the right haq, that is the thing that I'm worrying about. Even the Shafi was saying, I am worrying about the truth just being established. And this is how we should be when we go into a conversation with anybody. We just want the truth established. All right? Not to argue with nobody. Whatever we said that was incorrect, I know we left a lot, and I know we went too far. That's what I was saying, because those issues is too long. Stay tuned. Our next week, we do got Brother Duhak Baker coming on. So inshallah ta'ala, hopefully, brothers and sisters, we did reach out to some brothers to come on. So hopefully it's just about the time and the schedule. If the brother can actually come on that time that we have it on Friday. If not, I try to set it up during the middle of the week. We'll try to do the interview so that we can read all of our schedules, and we'll have some people come on, and inshallah ta'ala, that definitely having a guest would definitely be tremendous, inshallah. Whatever I said that was incorrect today, and any of the translations or any of the ad-libbing was definitely from myself and the shaitan. Whatever I said was correct from Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. For all the questions that I didn't answer throughout this whole talk, forgive me, because like I said, you shouldn't be asking me questions anyway, unless it's about Aleph Bata, or where the verse can be found, or where the book I'm reading from, or if the sheikh said this. But don't ask me about a ruling pertaining to nothing, because then I'm gonna look at you funny, because you know that I am not a scholar, and don't put a noose around my face neck. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.